Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I am so deeply excited to introduce all of you to today's guest, Lisa Michaud, here in the house. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me here. I am so excited. I feel like this has been years in the making, and I'm just so honored to be a part of the show.
Yes, it has been years in the making. Lisa and I were talking just before, actually, lots of stories that will come out in this episode for sure. Lisa and I have known each other for many years as friends, also in a professional relationship. Lisa was my coach way back when I started my business. And just the other week, I realized I hadn't had her on the podcast yet, and I thought I had. So we had a hilarious moment where I can't believe you haven't been on the show yet. I thought you had. You reminded me you hadn't, so we're making it happen. And I'm so grateful that you're here taking the time to talk with all of us.
I'm honored to be here. It's going to be so much fun.
Yay. Okay, let's dive right into it because today's episode is jam-packed. Lisa and I have some great topics planned for all of you, and she's going to really shed some light on something that I think is so needed in this health and wellness space, where we're bringing in the conversation of money and finances and how this all intertwines with our health and our wellness. So maybe we can start off, Lisa, with like just a quick version of like your story, maybe your journey with health and learning to like invest in yourself.
Oh my gosh. Okay. How long do we have again? Let me say this. I'll share the story that was like a big waking up for me, that I think has then continued to cascade and evolve into many different things. So, about 10 years ago, I was in a very different situation in my life. My husband and I had recently gotten married. I was living in Fort McMurray, Alberta, which is a small northern community. I had a great job. My husband and I were both making solid incomes. We had a rental property. We were traveling. We had a great group of friends. Like everything was going really well. We ticked all of the boxes of life. And then I had a health scare, and I faced the reality that I might only have a year or two left to live. I still remember that night laying in bed with my husband. I looked at him and I said, what do you want to do? If I only have a year or two left to live, like, what are we going to do? And he's the pragmatic one. And he looks at me and he's like, Lisa, you're the one with the timeline. What do you want to do? And in that moment, the first thing that came to my mind was move to Vancouver. And, I'll tell you, I'd wanted to live in Vancouver since I was a little girl. Like I remember coming for concerts and dance conventions. My parents would fall asleep in the hotel room and I'd sneak out to the window and peek out and look at the city lights and listen to the sirens and just be like, oh, I can't wait to live here one day. And at the time I was, 12 and 14. I couldn't exactly move out on my own. But as time went on, there was no change to that plan. There was no action in that. First it was, I'm too young. I live at home. And then it was, well, my university isn't here. My boyfriend isn't here. And then my next boyfriend wasn't here. And then my job wasn't here. We had a house. Then we had two houses. We had mortgages. We had responsibilities. My husband's a small town boy. We own an ATV. We own a quad. What the heck are we going to do with the quads in downtown Vancouver? And Vancouver became so expensive. And it was like, just eventually what I did is I just closed off that dream altogether and that goal. I was just like, it's not possible. And in that moment, having this health scare, it was this realization of, well, am I going to listen to these lists of excuses, or am I going to figure out a way to make it happen? And I'm very lucky that it was just a scare, but that was such a wake up call for me, and I really consider myself like a pretty intelligent, pretty driven, like an action taker in so many senses of the word. And this wake up call really made me realize that there was still a lot of ways that I was holding myself back. There were places in my life where I kept telling myself, I can't do it because I'm not ready. I don't know enough. It's too late. It's too soon. I'll do it when I have kids. I'll do it when the kids are grown up. I don't even have kids, but I was like, oh, I'm waiting for them to move out. There was just all these reasons. It's too expensive. It was just all these reasons why I couldn't. And that was such a conscious choice in my life. And what I want to also pull out for everybody listening, you can do this too, is like, so often we listen to the reasons why we can't do something. And I really believe it's so much more powerful to make a list of how you can, how is it possible? So whether we're talking about moving to Vancouver, starting a business, moving wherever you want to move, investing in your health and wellness. If you want to do your first mini triathlon or take your first yoga class, like really lean into how is it possible, not the reasons why it's not possible. So that really is where that was such a pivotal moment for me. And I really try and pull that through the rest of my life in terms of how can I look at things and say, how is it possible? And that's what I love doing, in my coaching business. And we also have a real estate business. I help investors grow their portfolios, because I also realize the value of money and how I didn't want to work forever, especially if we had any kind of sickness or anything like that come up. I want to make my money work for me. But that's really at the core of so much of this, is like, how is it possible is really the core question of that. I hope, if people stop listening at this point, I hope you take that away and don't forget that piece.
Yeah. Such a beautiful message, Lisa. And I know that was something that you helped me adopt in the coaching that we did together, and like really starting to see things through the lens of possibility. Right. And I love bringing that into the work with my clients now too. So thank you for helping plant that seed so I can spread
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I guess I didn't mention too, I'm also in Vancouver. So I live here now. So that we did make that move. One of many, many, many changes we did. And you might hear seagulls in the background because that's how close we are to the ocean, which is amazing. So it really was a full circle thing. It's amazing to be here and get to share that. I love that you bring that in with your clients. You're amazing.
Yeah, so a good, important point that you live in Vancouver now. Thank you for bringing that in.
I know. I was like, I feel like I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, she's there now. She's been there for years and living the dream. I love seeing like all the things that you're doing there and just really embracing the Vancouver lifestyle. And yeah, so beautiful. So let's talk more about money. Like this is interesting because many people listening to this podcast may be like, why are we talking about money? This is a podcast about sugar addiction and food and health and nutrition. And there is most definitely some connections here with our financial health and our physical and mental health. So I'm curious, in your opinion, Lisa, what is that connection, or what are those connections, between our financial stability, our financial health, our financial world, and maybe some physical and mental health pieces? And really, why does money matter?
I mean, I think there's lots of pieces to this. And Danielle, you and I were talking about this before the podcast, and I know your listeners are aware of this. There's like very real security and safety that comes from money. We all have basic needs, whether you subscribe to Maslow's hierarchy of needs or not. Like, it's almost impossible to feel calm, at peace, to be not stressed if you don't have some basic things in your life, such as food, shelter, access to clean water. I think those are kind of the basics. And then you kind of go up from there. And it's really hard. Like the Maslow's hierarchy really talks about how like at every stage, you can't actually move on to the next stage of growth and your own personal, goals, aspirations, and eventually enlightenment without having your needs covered along the way. And whether you subscribe to that, there's also like nervous system theory. What I love is that no matter what lens you look at it through, it's all the same. Like nervous system, like you can't be calm if you don't have some of those basic needs met. And in our modern society, money is the way to have those basic needs met. And, if a lot of people sometimes, hate on money, like I wish I didn't have to live with money. But if you research the history of money, like before money, it was cash. It was trading goats and eggs and things like that. Like there's, salt has been currency over time. So the fact of the matter is that we live in a world where we're interconnected and we need to support each other. We can't all do anything. We can't all do, each one of us do everything. And so, money is the currency that allows us to exchange that. And that ties back to our basic health. Like it's really hard to, it's really just really hard to function on a basic level if you don't have your needs met. And money is the way to do that. So, I mean, I think you can look at it, and we talked about this a bit, on the far end of the spectrum, like there are parts of health that are very, very, very expensive. Organic food typically does cost more. You can go full like hyperbaric oxygen chambers for your health and, massages every day and nutritional coaches and working with personal trainers and having the PMF mats and red light therapy and float tanks. And there's so many things that you could spend money on in terms of health. I don't necessarily think you don't need to go all the way that far. But there are some things I believe that people need in place in order to even just have that foundation in which to build their health on top of. So I think that's a really big piece of where money ties into your overall health. Now, I'll also say there's definitely a mindset piece here too, because we all know those people that have money, have everything, and either still aren't happy or still feel like they need more. And it's just an insatiable thing. So I do think that there's a level of it where, scarcity really can come into play, never having enough. I don't want to use the word greed, but I'll use it just for the sake of this conversation, like that, like never enoughness. I think greed is actually a symptom of rooted scarcity. And that's a tough thing too, because you never feel like there's enough. You never feel like you can take your feet off the brake. You there's, never feeling worthy, never feeling like you're enough, never feeling like you have enough. That never allows you to take a break, to prioritize yourself, and do the things that are going to make you healthy, enjoy life now, and live a long, healthy life going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought in that mindset piece there too, because I can very much resonate to that. Like, and we can have a whole other podcast episode on like financial mindset stuff, right? The beliefs that we carried. Like for me, having too much money means I'm a bad person. Like, money grows on trees, like all the stuff. And I know I've unpacked so much of this with you when we did our coaching together. Like all the beliefs that we carry around money, that then are also show up in other areas, right? They really transfer over to our beliefs about health, about nutrition, about all the things that we need, right? There's not enough. I'm not enough. Like that's just so many layers there. And yeah, I love the part, obviously I really resonate. And I think everybody listening, I just want to bring that forward again, that nervous system piece is like when we don't have those basics needs met, when we can't. And I mean, this is a very real issue for a lot of the world, is not even having enough money to buy real food, right? Instead, needing to live on craft dinner at McDonald's, right? And then, of course, getting sucked into the sugar addiction cycle and all of this. The processed food tends to be cheaper than real food, which is totally ass backwards, in my opinion, right? That's a whole nother conversation, rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But when we can actually maybe climb out of that hole and get into a place where, okay, we've got some needs met, and we're going to dive deeper into that with Lisa, because there's so much that we can do when we really take a look at our financial blueprint and start allocating things in a better way, and realizing we actually have more money than we think, or we have more resources than we think. But it does need to start with that mindset piece and understanding that there's a connection here, when it comes to our mental health. And I'll share very personally, I've spent many of my early entrepreneur years starting a business is freaking hard. And I was like very much in poverty mindset for a lot of it. Like I wasn't making a lot of money. I wasn't getting the clients that I needed. Like bills were piling up. Like it was really, really stressful for both Ben and I. And, just going through those periods of times it's really hard to feel happy. It's really hard to feel creative. It's really hard to want to be motivated to go and do things, right? And it's just really a restricting mindset to live in. And I know for me, it contributed a lot to my anxiety and my stress levels and my desire to go and then binge on sugar and ice cream at the end of the day, right? So there's a huge connection here. I think everybody's getting that now.
I totally agree. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I mean, I think there's statistics that show something like 80% of people that have $10 million or more still don't feel like it's enough.
Right. Yeah.
And still it's just to show that yes, there's a financial reality. And I think we're going to talk about that later, but also our mindset does play into that. And, that just having more money, if you even had a ton of money pile onto you tomorrow, that's not necessarily that's not going to solve all your problems. Most lottery winners lose it in a year. So I just think that's both of those things are really both true.
Yeah. Well said. So one of the things that I really notice in my practice and my coaching, and I think will really resonate with a lot of my listeners, is this resistance that so many women have to spending money on themselves, right? And spending money, especially on their health, right? I know this is something I come up against a lot when I have consultations or when I launch programs. There's a lot of women that follow me or listen to the podcast. They're like, oh, I can't afford it, or I can't get into that, right? There's this really limiting can't mindset, which yes, can sometimes be absolute reality with financial, issues in the household. But at the same time, I think there's a bigger subset of other things going on there. So what, in your opinion, why is it so hard for us, especially as women, to spend money on ourselves, whether it's with health related stuff or, a day at the spa, or what's the blocks there?
Okay, so I think there's some tactical ones, and then I think there's also some mindset ones. You'll see that as a bit of a pattern. I always say I'm a bit of woo, a bit of do. So I feel as far as tactical, I've noticed this personally. I've also noticed it with other people as well. And I kind of call it comfort spending. When whatever we're currently spending, we get used to spending it and we just spend it and often don't think about it. It's kind of the reason why memberships are so sticky, right? Because people don't tend to cancel them, right? So whatever you kind of already have existing, it's sort of easy to just kind of continue on that. The challenge comes when we're adding a new line item or adding a new expense, even whether it's smaller or bigger. It's that new thing becomes a bit of a psychological piece. That's what I found. So, your cell phone bill, you don't think twice about that. Maybe your car payment, you don't think about that. But and even as they go up, you don't really notice it as much as we do the new things. And so I found the biggest kind of hurdle is like the resistance to adding new spending. The things that we are not used to spending on become a bit of a challenge. And I think it's a habit like anything else where you get used to spending it. And once you get comfortable spending money on yourself, if you haven't been before, then it becomes a habit, and then you find a way to make it work. But I think it's like a lot of resistance with any budget or with any new financial commitment that becomes a challenge, right? Most people don't want to see their bills come up. And I'm sure a lot of this ties to like, the scarcity piece and ideas such as I always need to get it cheaper. I always need to be saving money. Lots of these kinds of things that we've been taught and grown up, and we don't want to like waste it. We want to hold on to it. We want to, some cases, hoard it. That all comes in. So I think there's also mindset pieces, and I want to share, a really personal story for me. So, and I share this like without any judgment of the people who, sort of imprinted this on me, just acknowledgement of it. But when I was growing up, the women in my house, like my mother and my grandmother, when they would look at other women who, took days off to just have a day to themselves, that went to the gym, that maybe had a personal trainer, that got their nails done, like got their hair done, like whatever that is, they always called it like, oh, that's a woman. She takes care of herself. And that should sound like a positive thing, but they always had this air of like, oh, like that's a woman who takes care of herself. It was like this judgment. There was this sort of like, oh, she shouldn't be doing that. It was like this. And then there was also this guilt and shame in my household around women taking care of themselves. It was like, those are the kind of women that can take care of themselves, and we're not those kind of women. And so for me, that really came out when I had our daughter 6 years ago. And I remember like going to the gym and coming back and just feeling this huge guilt. And to be honest, like it's still a process I'm working through. Like it's I do it, but we're still working through it. But like I felt this in like so much like, oh my gosh, I should have been home with my kid. I'm a woman who takes care of herself. Like, oh, and then I really had to like redefine like, what does a woman who takes care of herself mean? And understanding why it's so important that I take care of myself, because everything good comes from me. And if I'm exhausted, as my friend Matt Corker says, you spew out exhaust. That's all you have to give out. And so I totally see those, but that's an example of one of the things that I've had to kind of work through. And maybe the phrase in your house, maybe it wasn't like a woman who takes care of herself. Maybe it was something different. But I do think there's some of these stories and these messages that we get growing up of like, we're not the kind of people that do this. There's like shame, guilt around women, I think particularly taking time for themselves. And like, let's be real here. A lot of also what we're talking about here is also taking time to move your body, time to rest, time to cook, time to do whatever that is, to look after yourself, time to be under the red light and PMFM, whatever it is. Like you need the time to do that. Right. And so I think there's a lot of like, women just in our society aren't really given permission to do that. So we have to really take it for ourselves. I think there's also tied into that is worthiness. So like, I think it's like, are you a woman who's worthy of taking time for yourself? And I don't think that's even been in our vocabulary before the last several years. Like it was just like, you just don't, you do, you get it done. That's what a woman is. And now I think we're really having to shift it to like, my worthiness is not attached to my doing. My worthiness is not attached to how much I get done, how much I accomplish. My worthiness is just innate and it's just there. And because I am essentially always worthy, innately worthy, I'm worthy of taking care of myself. I'm worthy of investing in myself. I'm worthy of spending money on myself. I'm worthy of that gift to myself, not because I've earned it, not because I deserve it through anything that I've done, but just because I do. So I think that's something we have to repattern as a society. And I know that's something you're really passionate about. I know that's what we're trying to do with this podcast and raising the next generation of kids. And I think it's also something that each one of us really has to take on to repattern that for ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many good things in there. I just want to go into all of them. I resonate with all of that. These are all things that I've had to work on. The worthiness piece, especially, I see this show up with a lot of my clients. It's like, yeah, I'm not, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough to like invest. Or, I mean, when we're talking about money and we're talking about time, we're just talking about resources, right? And it's interesting because time is one resource depending on what kind of consciousness you live in. We don't get back, right? And money is something that we can always find more of. And that was something that took me a lot, and thanks to a lot of the coaching that we did, and I'm still working on that. And fascinating to just even personal example for me, my brother and me, complete opposite, raised in the same household, complete opposite relationships with money. My brother has never had a problem spending money and making money. He's deeply knows that he can always make more money. And I just somehow took the other approach of like, money's really hard to make. It's really hard to find, right? So therefore the best way to make money is to save money and not spend it, right? So there was like this scarcity piece that came through me, but my brother, he runs a huge business now. He's got all the toys. Like he has no problem spending money. He's very generous. And that comes back to him too. So there's like this energy piece that I'm working on embodying. And it's, yeah, there's just so many layers there. But I love what you said also about your personal story in the household. And the word that came up for me that I think would resonate with a lot of my listeners is selfish, right? A lot of times we're taught like it's selfish to look after yourself. It's selfish. How dare you spend money on yourself, but don't buy your kids the brand new fancy shoes with the lights on it? Or like, you know, just so much that comes into there where like everyone else is more worthy of your money and your time, and you're not worthy of taking time or spending money on yourself. Like there's something wrong here. And this may be a total rabbit hole for another day. So we can end this if you don't want to go there. But like, I have this curiosity as you were talking about how much of this is actually ancestrally passed down. Like how much as the feminine have we never been allowed to, like, we're in theory not the breadwinner, right? And now we are starting to make money. You know, we were the woman in the home that would like get the allowance, and like the husband was the one that made all the money and they were in control of all the money. So we can't use that, like it's not our money. So there was like this energy around perhaps, I don't know, I'm curious your thoughts on that, of like what some of those older patterns say from our great grandparents, our grandparents, you know, obviously living through times like the Depression and you know, the war, and you know, having to kind of pass this on in terms of like that energy around money's really scarce, right? Resources are scarce.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on this. I love, we're going deep. So one of the things that comes up for me that I do really think, and I think it's important to acknowledge this, I'm really glad you brought it up. It's that a lot of the stories that we have in relationship to money has been passed down over generations, without a doubt. And we also have to be very compassionate to that, because if we had parents who grew up in countries and situations where they did not have money, there was no choice but to get it done, to work hard, to save money. Like they did not have the resources to go and buy another pair of pants. If they had to sew them up, you know, there may not have been anyone else to look after the kids. If we're coming, like, you know, both my grandmother and my great grandmother were both single parents. They were both widowed with very young kids in, 1920s, which would have been Italy at the time, then Yugoslavia, and then, the 1950s in what was Yugoslavia at the time. So post World War II, post World War I and post World War II. So we're not talking about abundant times, abundant countries. And so like even like let's also take it back to food, like finishing everything on your plate. Don't let any food go to waste. You have to eat it all. Like this was not something that they did and that back in the day, or something that they continued to say to us as when we were children, and that's been passed down because someone's trying to give us generational trauma. This was their reality. Their food may have been rationed. There was not an abundance of food. Like there was no other option. It's like, this is what is for dinner. You eat what I give you because I cannot do anything else. And so I do think it's really important to have perspective on this, to have compassion for them, for ourselves, and recognize that a lot of this was their reality. And what we're doing now in current times is our reality has changed and our mindset still hasn't caught up. And so this is all we're trying to do, is bring those two things into alignment, and also recognize where our mindset, as you were kind of speaking to, where our mindset can also help elevate our reality if that reality is maybe not where we want it to be. So it's like connecting them and also elevating them together. So I think that's an important piece. I also think there's culturally, I see some relationships where two people, like one person is the breadwinner, the other person stays at home. And like, there is a beautiful exchange of like, this is our money. Like we both earn this, like you do the different things. And like, so I do think there are a lot of examples of those beautiful, healthy dynamic. Dave Ramsey talks about finance. He's, I mean, it goes without saying, I don't agree with everybody on everything, but he really talks about this with his wife. She raised their kids. He's like, it's not my money. It's our money. It's our money. And I think there's power there. And that being said, like some of the parts of our culture that I don't love are the fact that like women end up doing so much unpaid work and unpaid and unappreciated. And I think unappreciated is probably another piece there too. So like we are often the ones, families coming to town, the woman is probably like making those arrangements, figuring that out, maybe getting the house ready, making plans, caregiving, household stuff, emotional intelligence, emotional management. Like there's so many things that women do that ends up being unpaid labor. And I think there's not a lot of awareness of that on like a societal level, and not a lot of appreciation for it. So I think those things contribute in there as well, as to like, yes, this is like I'm not going to look at myself or you or anybody here listening and say, this is your fault. You did this. Like, no, this is like so many things. And I hope that this conversation helps bring some self-compassion, some self-love. Like, and if you're having awareness, it's like awareness is the first step. Previous generations didn't even have the awareness. And generations before that did not even have there was no other option. It was what it is. You get what you get and you don't get upset, and there's no other way to handle that. And so I think some compassion, awareness for them and for ourselves will help us go a long way in repatterning this and not passing down this trauma and these mindsets for future generations.
Yeah. So beautiful. Love everything. This is so good. So I would love to go into sort of this next piece, because again, I'm like, a lot of what I'm bringing forward here is like, I've been through this. I'm thinking about, everybody listening. And I still catch myself in this sometimes. So let's talk about values. I'm going to use the word values. Some people might not even know what that is, but one of the things that you helped me with, and I'm still working through and staying on top of, is like noticing where in my life I was spending money that wasn't actually important to me, or on things that wasn't important, versus spending money on things that were. And I was living in this while complaining, like, I don't have enough money. I don't have money to do the things I want to do. And just like living in total victim mentality. But when you had me like really like do some work and think about that, I was realizing, wow, I'm spending like hundreds of, if not thousands of dollars a year, right? Like over here, that I don't really want to be spending money on. I don't really give a crap about. Right. And so where do you think, that shows up for a lot of women? Do you think there's a lot of people like me out there who are doing that? Like really spending out of alignment? Okay, it's not just me.
Yes.
And how do we start spending more in alignment? Like, how do we start doing that work?
It is not just you. And I don't know why, but like we're so programmed to also look at other people and be like, well, they're spending it, so I should spend it. Or we don't even question, we don't even think about it, right? Like this was my whole thing, before my healthcare, I was just like ticking the boxes of like what I thought I should do. And so, I think we're in this period where people are starting to wake up and be like, wow, I can actually control this and I can be conscious of this and I can think about what I want to do. So, absolutely, like you are not alone. There's still so many people out there that are completely asleep to this and not aware yet. So I think the first thing about is like, how do you figure out what spending is important to you and what isn't? And there's a couple different ways that you can do this. So, one kind of, I'll give you a bit more of like a general coaching idea is do the traditional wheel of life. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it, wheel of life. There's tons of them online. It's basically just like a circle. You cut some pie slices in it and you identify the parts that are the most, or the parts of your life, that you have. So for most people, it's things such as, there might be a family slice of pie. There should be a health slice of pie, finances, slice of pie. Friendships. For me, I love the word, adventure is something that I love. Spirituality or religious, career, or personal mission or purpose. Those are some examples of different slices of pie you might have. Maybe philanthropy, like whatever the things are. You'll see there's some traditional ones online and you can always make them your own. But so often once you have your pie, then what you do is you rank like, what's my score on this? Am I a 5 out of 10? Am I a 1 out of 10? Am I a 10 out of 10 on this? And I'll tell you, this is a really great awareness piece too, is 99 out of 100 times, the areas that you're ranking the highest in are going to be the ones where you are investing time, money, resources, energy into. Like it's very rare to have a 9 or a 10 out of 10 and you're not giving it time or money. Like I don't know if I've ever seen that scenario. So your health, the chances of your health feeling like an 8 or 9 or a 10 and you're not spending any time on it, like Danielle, you're not spending any money on it. Like what, how likely is that to happen? Right. So I think that's just a great awareness, because it makes sense logically, but I think we don't think about it until we reverse engineer it and really understand that, like, for these things, these important parts of my life, for them to be successful, I need to be able to put time and energy and resources and money into them for them to be successful. So I think that's a great kind of starting point from a general perspective. And then there's two different ways you can go about this from a financial lens. And first one is to go through your spending. So this can literally be pulling up credit card statements, your e-transfer history, your bank account, whatever that looks like. Maybe you have an old fashioned logbook if you're awesome like that. Maybe it's an app, like there's the You Need a Budget app, Wine app, whatever that is. And look at it, go line by line. Could be you, could be with a partner, and really rank it. Like, how much did this contribute to my life? And it doesn't, on a scale of 1 to 5, like, how much joy did this bring? How much peace did this bring? And really you start to rank these things. Some of them obviously you can't get rid of, but over time you're going to start to see some patterns, like, for example, for me, the other night I spent, $16 on an Uber. Let me tell you, Ubers are one of the things I hate spending money on. Do not love. I think everybody has their things that they're really cheap about. That is one of mine. But do you know what? It brought me this night at the beach with my daughter, and it was such a great night. And so, like, and she still talks about it. She's like, it was so relaxing at the beach. I'm like, what are you talking about? You were running around. I had to, it was not, I'm glad you were relaxed. But like, the joy that brought was is so much bigger than $16 I spent at a coffee shop because I was running late. I had to pick up a coffee and a tea, or a tea and a sandwich. And there's just no comparison in that. So I think that's a really great place to start. Another angle you could also take from this financial lens is, hopefully you have goals. I'm not going to soapbox about goals today. Maybe that's another episode. But I think it's important to have clarity on goals. And you don't need to know exactly, but you need to have an idea of what you're trying to do. So I want to live a long life. I want to be more flexible. I want to be able to keep up with my kids or grandkids, whatever those goals are. And especially with your health goal, like, you can also then go back to your spending and assess, how much did each of these spending lines put me in the direction of my goals? Which ones actually put me in that direction? If and again, this could be health related or otherwise related, but like, how many of these things were aligned with the causes that I say are important to me? How much is it aligned with how much I say family is important to me? Did I treat my family out for dinner, or, did I go to another networking event instead of spending time with my family? Like, really assessing these pieces. And again, this is not a judgment around either way. Like, maybe your goal is your business, in which case, yes, you should be investing in those things, and that will help you with your goals. But the point is to really look at how much are these line items contributing to my goal? So I think those are some ways that people can figure out, first of all, where's your money going? And then, how important is it to me? How much did it bring to my life, and how closely aligned was it to my goals and the things that I say are important to me?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this is so helpful. I need to do some of these things again. It's time. Yeah, really.
Me too. Me too.
And what you shared is coming down into really doing the work and understanding what is important to you. And I'm bringing this forward again because I know every one of my clients has never done this. They come into my programs, they're like, "What's a value? Like, I get to choose my values, and isn't it just what it should be? Family, health, like the traditional ones, right? Career, like the basics." And
Totally.
It's other things, and I know you taught me this. So that in itself, I just want to pull out for everybody, is really baseline, in my opinion. Start with actually figuring out what matters to you in your life. And it might not be your health. That's okay, right? Let that go. Right now, it might be your career. It might not even be your family. It might be your career right now that's more important, right? All these places that we can really just lean into and have compassion for, and let go of the guilt around not having it be what everyone around us is. So for me, that was such a helpful piece, because then you said we can go through and be okay, this is where I want to spend my money. And as you're talking, I'm really thinking of this very real life example currently of buying our dream property. This has been such a scary, at the time of recording this, we're actually just 2 weeks from moving in. So it's been a couple months since we purchased, and now we're having to wait, which has been painful. But that in itself is for me, it just feels like such a big shift in how I used to think, and such an example of I would never have done this in the past. So knowing my values and our values of the life that we want to create for ourselves, and the environment we want to live in, the way we want to raise our family, the healing center and community events that we want to host and gather, and all these things that both Ben and I are so clear on the future and what we want it to look like. We found this property and it was way above our budget. And we're holy crap, how, you said at the beginning of this episode, how can we make this happen instead of oh, that we can't make this happen. That's too expensive. Right. And we're like, no, if this is meant to be, like, we're going to make it happen. And we spent a lot of time like with the finances, like, okay, what can we move? Like, can this go over here? Okay. Can we do this? Can we do this? And like, we found a way to make it happen because it was so valuable to us, the dream that we were creating. And I think that like, not, I just wanted to share that example because no, in theory, no, we couldn't afford it right at that time, but we're going to find a way to afford it. And we trust that and have a plan in place to make that happen. Right. So we can be looked after and our family can be looked after. And we feel really like it's scary and terrifying to like purchase a house at the top of your budget, as maybe some of you listening. And at the same time, we are just so grateful that we made that happen and we didn't let this opportunity pass us by and lose out on like this dream life that we know we want to create for ourselves. So like,
So
that's
beautiful.
where the values can show up. Yeah, I thought that was a cool example. It's very relevant right now for me.
That's so good. So good. And it's just a great example of like from like the Uber ride to your dream home. Like it doesn't matter the dollar value, like this principle and knowing your values and where it's aligned, like that, let that guide you.
Yeah. Yeah. And like in your example,
What you do?
it's so beautiful. Like one of your values being like adventures and quality time with your daughter, right? And like being able to go and do things. And it's amazing how, I mean, we're not going to go too woo-woo here, but like the universe can show up and support you a lot of times in these choices and in these decisions, right? And in these flows, you know, if you're really working towards something that's for your higher good. So values are really important. Know what's important. And then you can also know what's not important that you're spending money on. And I know there were lots of things in the past. I need to do this audit again because I'm sure there's current things that I'm not even aware of, right? But we could think of it as even time. You know, like I've caught myself lots being like, I'm spending so much time like watching Netflix or scrolling on Instagram. Like these aren't actually things that I value and want to spend my time on, and they don't really light me up, right? So like working on breaking those habits and those patterns and shifting into like more of the spending time on the things that I want to be spending time on that fuel me. So we can talk about that with resources everywhere, right? But it's such deep work and it takes time for sure.
So good. Yes. I'm like, okay, we need another episode on like time auditing.
Totally.
I love that too.
Yeah. Okay. So then the question is like, how do we, I know you've touched a little bit on this, but for the women listening, like how do we actually begin getting more comfortable spending money on ourselves, right? Or spending money on our health? Is it just like healing the I'm not worthy wound or the selfishness wound, or like, you know, how do we actually start to be okay with that? And then even the next step be like allocating money to start spending on those things.
Yeah. So I think there's two pieces here. I think there's definitely like the actual money piece and then also the mindset pieces. So, you know, I talk about like getting in reality with your money, and that definitely means like you actually need to know what money you have, what's your resources, what's your budget, you know, like what does that actually look like? So you do need to have that picture of it. Right. And that's where, you know, you can figure out like what expenses can you cost, like cut, like where can you walk or bike or take transit instead of driving, right? And then also benefit your health in the process. Can you, like one of the things that I cut out that has made a big difference is alcohol, like cutting out a lot of alcohol. So like it's amazing how much I used to normalize, you know, like $150 at the liquor store every month or however often, right? And so like cutting that out opens things up, right? So like what are some of the expenses that you can cut out? And sometimes in some of these examples, like getting healthier is actually cheaper than being unhealthy, which is the amazing thing. And then also I think, you know, one of the pieces that we miss a lot is also income bringing in. And like one time, you know, if you, let's say for example, you're like, I want to invest in this retreat or in this coach or going big here, like a sauna, like big time, like is there something you could sell online? Is there like, can you downsize your car? Could you like, is there something that you could do that would allow you to if you look around your house, like what things are you not using that you could sell, that you can get rid of, that aren't bringing you joy, right? And in terms of more reoccurring things, like do you have a room in your house you could rent out? Like, do you have space in your house you could like Airbnb? Like, I don't know if people know this, but you can actually Airbnb just a room in your house. Obviously check your local laws, which is a whole other story, but like that's a way like you could make more money by that. Like you could maybe make 80, 100, depending on where you live, $200 a night, just doing something like that. You know, there's also like side jobs. Like, could you do side jobs? Could you put yourself up on Upwork to do something creative, or Fiverr? If you have a business, can you raise your prices in your job? How can you make a business case and show your worth to ask for a raise or go for promotion? Can you switch careers and switch companies? Sometimes that's a great way to make more money too. And then I would also say looking at your investments and make sure that they're actually working for you. Get intimate with your money and find out, like, is this investment actually doing it for me? What's my return on this? Am I making money? Is it stagnant? Are the fees eating it all up? Hint, hint. If you're in mutual funds, they are. So lots of things I could say about that. Yeah, look at your investments too, and look at your money and figure out like where is it working for you? Sometimes these little, if let's say you have, I'm just going to throw out the number, you have, $100,000 in investments and you're able to save 1%, that's $1,000 a year. That's almost $100 a month right there. And like, if you could just like get a lower fee, right? Let's say you can make 2% more on that money. That's $2,000 a year. And that's going to grow over time, compounded. So like, there's lots of different ways that we could talk about bringing money in. One example for me to reallocating, like, this Aura ring. So I wanted an Aura ring. For those that don't know, this is one of them. Like, this is a health investment for sure. So it's a ring that helps track your sleep, also your activity. Now it's gone so far as to like stress, recovery, all these kinds of things. And every day it gives me like a sleep score, a readiness score, and an activity score. And I really wanted it for the sleep because after having a baby and she started sleeping, and then like, I still wasn't sleeping, and I wanted some support in terms of the sleep because I just felt tired all the time. And I wanted one for years. I like knew which one I wanted. I knew the color. I knew how much it was going to cost. I knew the size. Like, I had it all sorted out. And I remember talking to my coach about it. I was like, one day I'm going to get this ring. And she was like, one day, like, she's like, well, how much does it cost? I'm like, it's going to be right around the $550 mark. I know this number. I've got this. And she challenged me because like, these are still things sometimes we all need the outside opinion. And she was like, well, how could you afford that? Like, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of saving slowly, like, but I really wasn't. She's like, well, how often do you spend like $550? And I realized when I looked up into the budget, I was like, well, I actually spend this like pretty frequently, between like some supplements here, some dinners out here, some meals here, like, like it just, an extra massage in there or a chiro, like it adds up pretty fast. And I was like, okay, well, she's like, well, how fast can you do it? I was like, I think I can actually even do it like maybe this month. And I did, like, I cut back on expenses. Like, and this was a one-time thing, right? So it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm forever never having another massage again, or I'm forever not, going to have all these supplements or like anything like that. But it was like, you know what, for this month, like I could probably just like hold off on this, one out of my 10 supplements. I'm probably okay. Or like, my body actually feels pretty good. Like, let me not have another massage this month, and let me, instead of doing these meals, like, let me cook at home more this month. And there was the money, and I was able to afford it like within 30 days of making that goal. So I think that is like kind of the tactical pieces of like, where can I cut, what can I bring in, and how does that balance out? Then there's also the mindset pieces. And I think this is definitely a journey. Like, I mean, me even just sharing this and you sharing this, like, it's not something that you do once and you're like, oh, well, I'm healed, I'm worthy, I'm good, every decision feels great. It is a process. And so I think you start with like, and this is going to be so personal, but like, what is one thing you could do this week to challenge yourself in this question of spending on yourself? And it's like, get yourself outside of your comfort zone. So if you're like, oh, I feel comfortable buying like the tea, but I would never, maybe go out for lunch with myself and just read a good book and just enjoy that time for myself. Well, maybe like that's your expansion piece. Or if you're like, wow, like I never buy organic, like, can you challenge yourself to buy one organic thing this week? Can you challenge yourself? Like, oh, I always just do yoga at home, like, but I'd really like to do it in a class, or I'd really like to, do it with other people, or maybe go on like an evening yoga event. Like, challenge yourself to do that. But I think it's like building in these opportunities to stretch ourselves and in a way build that muscle, both from like the money budget, like stretching that a bit, and getting comfortable with that being an expense in your habit, in your comfort zone of spending. And then also just really noticing as you're doing those things, what's coming up for you. And it's sometimes like mantras or ways of like framing it. It depends on like what's coming up for you. If it's like, oh, I should be doing more, I shouldn't be resting, or this is too expensive. Like, reframe this to like, I've found a way in my budget to make this happen. And like that's why I think it's important to first get reality with the money, so you can be safe in those purchases. But like, I've allocated the money. It is perfectly safe for me to be spending money on myself. Or when I'm taken care of, everyone around me is also taken care of, or everything comes from me being healthy, or I'm doing this. This is I'm an investment in being. This is an investment in my health for the long term, or whatever like that thing is that you have to repattern. Saying those things to yourself and repeating yourself, and getting in practice with that on a regular basis. But I invite everyone to do that this week. Like, spend some time, look at your money, and it doesn't have to be like big things. You don't have to go out and buy the sauna this week. Do like something small that like pushes you a little outside your comfort zone, that gets you feeling safe in spending money on yourself, and work on like being in that experience, and also like afterwards reflecting on like what was the gift of that? How did it add to your life? How did it make you feel great? Just so you can help also build the positive neural pathway association with those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. Well, I'm committing to buying a house this week, so we actually sign papers next week. So
Oh my goodness!
scary.
Oh my goodness! Wow! I'm Danielle, A plus brownie points for the student in the front.
Oh no, don't feed that pattern. We don't need that one. Yeah, those are really, really great points, Lisa. I really love how you bring it forward too about getting to know your money. That is something that is a continual work in progress for me. And I've had to face there's so many years when I started my business that I just had no idea. I had no idea what my annual expenses are. I had no idea, well, we don't know where money's going, where it's coming in, how much is there, where it's like, we can't actually take aligned action, right? And for me, it just caused a lot of I don't really know. It was like a scary place to go, right? I just assume I'm always broke and poor, so I don't want to look at it, right? I think there's just a lot of
Mm,
fear around money in that. I'm sure I'm not the only one in that's afraid to look and see where things are, right? But
yes, yes.
same with our health. Maybe you're afraid to go and get your blood work drawn because you don't want to know what's going on, right? It's so
Yeah.
much
Or
easier
you're
to
afraid
not
to go
know
to the
anything.
workout class and be like, oh my gosh, I'm really out of shape. I'm weaker than I
Totally.
thought. Yeah.
Totally. But we're never going to move forward in life if we don't get a baseline of our reality first, whether it's your health or
Totally.
your finances. So I love that reminder, for everybody out there, just understand what's going on. And when you do, it can actually be a fun thing to be like, oh, I didn't realize I was spending money there. I'm not even using that anymore. I'm going to stop that.
Yeah.
And I've done that recently with software in my business. There's so much software that I have that I'm paying monthly subscriptions for. And I've done this whole analysis
Yes.
recently, preparing for a year off. And I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this. Cancel, cancel, cancel. And, I've saved a couple $100 a month, just letting go of some
Amazing.
softwares that I actually don't really need, that were just kind of fun and convenient for a bit, but I don't really need. So yeah, I think that's, yeah, that just really landed for me as you shared that. Really beautiful to have that reminder. Thank you for all of these reminders.
Oh, you know what? That's a good reminder for me. I do it every so often, but it's probably time for me to refresh too, right? This isn't a one-time thing. We're evolving. And like I said, we get comfortable spending the things we're spending. So it's important to just go back and refresh and make sure it's still aligned. One last little thing I'll say is I think you're right. There is a lot of fear of I don't want to look at it. I'm afraid of these things. But I always tell people, I'm grab a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle of it. And on one side, just write out what are all the fears. Just what are the things that are coming up? I don't want to look at it. I already know I'm poor. I already know I don't have enough money. I'm in so much debt, whatever the fears are, I'm afraid of what the reality is going to be. And then on the flip side, start to either problem solve. Some of them are problems to solve. I don't even have all my logins. I don't even know where to log in. It's okay. So that's a problem solving, right? It's okay, well, I'm going to go into the bank on Tuesday and I'm going to go in with my ID and they'll set me up with the online banking and I'll know how to get in and check, that's done, right? And some of them might be I'm afraid this will never get better. That's more of a mindset thing, which is how do you flip that? And, you said some really great things. It's how can I ever get better if I don't know where I am now? Right. And also I trust in myself that I'll be able to figure out a way. I've figured out other hard things in my life. I can figure this out too. And if you need help, the budget version of this is to go to ChatGPT, punch in your fears and get it to, I'm very serious, get it to flip it around. And then obviously the more, supportive and the premium version of that is working with a coach on these kinds of things and to work through that. So yeah, those are some ways that you can actually, because I don't think most people can really just do it when there's fears. So this is a way to bring the fears to the forefront and kind of work through them in a way that's supportive for people.
Yeah, totally.
Because these are hard things.
Yeah. And they take time. I really just want to mention that as well. Time, effort, energy, all the resources what Lisa is talking about here today is this is big stuff. This is might take some time to unpack, to work through. It definitely will take some time.
You're never done with it. It's never ending.
I'm still working on it. So is Lisa. We both shared, a little bit about that today. So I want to leave people, Lisa, with, I mean, they've got so much out of this episode, but I'm curious if here, as we wrap things up, you can leave us with some like smart money management tips. Like, what are the pieces that you use in your life, keeping in mind that we obviously have listeners from all over the world, but what are some of the ways that you really love? You've already shared so many, so maybe you've shared them all, but are there any others that you want to add here at the end so people can really start possibly finding that money to allocate to things that they value?
Yeah, let me share a couple things that I think are applicable to anybody at any level. So, one of the first things I'll say is being better at money really depends on like what stage you're at, because there's different skills within money. So, like earning money, I believe, is different than being able to keep your money, which is different than protecting your money, which is different than growing your money. So, I think it's really important to self-identify what stage are you at. Are you in the stage where you need to or actually earn more money and learn how to earn more money? Are you at a stage where you need to learn how to keep more of the money in terms of like, budgeting it? Are you in this, like, do you have to learn how to protect it? So potentially things like insurance or different products of like in terms of maybe like estate planning, things like that. And then growing your money is like, how do you actually get it to become more money and have it make money babies for you? And so I think that like, that's one thing I would want everyone to really think about is like, what bucket of those, which skill set do you need to work on first? Which one is your first starting point? Because a lot of people might be really good at earning money and be making, multiple six figures a year, but they're not so good at keeping it. Or maybe they keep it, but it's just like sitting in an account and they don't really know how to invest it, how to grow it. And people are like, well, I've got this, but like, I don't really have a backup plan, or like, how am I transferring this down through generations? Or what if I get sick or things like that? How do I protect this? Right. So I think it's first like self-identifying and recognizing that those are all different skills. And so don't overwhelm yourself by trying to be like, I need to learn about this and this and this and this, like all of the things all at once. Don't worry about that. Figure out which one is the most critical for you to work on right now and focus on that for 6 to 12 months and really like learning as much as you can about that, getting educated in that space and allow that one to grow. So I'd say that. Second kind of piece I want to share, and I know I just said like, don't get overwhelmed and like take these step by step, but I just like I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't really hammer this home. And it's the key part about investing. We talk so much about saving. Even I think about it with kids, and now this is something we've recently changed with our daughter. Like we've just been talking about like saving, but it's like, no, like investing, like that's actually where the freedom comes in. That's actually where the cool thing is, because if all you're doing is working, saving, in order for that to keep going, you have to keep working. And at some point you may decide that you don't want to, or you're not able to, or you just want to take a break. And so I really believe that we don't talk enough about how powerful it is when you can make your money make money for you. So I would just say like, whatever stage you're at, please make sure you don't forget that key piece about learning about how to invest your money. So how do you do that? It's definitely in all these stages, but getting educated. So can you work with a money coach? Can you take a financial education course? Can you listen to podcasts? Can you read books? Like, yes, you can. You can do any one of those things, like get yourself educated. And then the final kind of money tip I'd say is get yourself unbiased advice. So the bank, I will tell you, when the bank looks at their things and their goals, not a single one of them is your wealth and your financial freedom and how much money you've created. That is not their goals. So I highly recommend finding a financial planner that has the option of paying them a fee. So a fee only planner. I think that's so huge. Really, really, really helpful. Some planners, there's one actually that we've recently collaborated with that he, because it doesn't always make sense for people to just like pay the fee. Sometimes it makes sense it's actually more cost effective and easier for them to get in by having fees included in some of their products, but they're at least transparent about it. And you have the option that'll help guide you through that process. So I think working with an advisor who's going to be unbiased and who has the option of paying them a fee for their advice, I think that is a real game changer, because you don't have to do this all your own. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. But trust me when I say, like, and I'm sure you've all seen the graphics, and if you haven't, go Google them. Like, the sooner you start investing your money, time is on your side on this one. We talk about time being like a big one as far as like time to work out, time to cook meals, time to rest, all those things. Like, you need time, your money needs it just as much. And the more time you can give your money to grow, the less work you're going to have to put in, the easier this is all going to be. And I don't say that to like discourage you. No matter what age you're at, today's a great day to start. But don't put this off for years, because you will be costing yourself a lot of money and freedom and stress. Like, actually put in the work, get some support. You don't have to do this all, but help your money make money for you, so that you can have some of these decisions be a lot easier, more free, and give you that peace, less stress, more nervous system health, as you're repatterning these things and creating more health, vitality, and just joy in your life.
So good. So good. Oh my goodness. Yeah, such amazing tips. Thank you, Lisa. And I'm like just nodding along at that last one, especially with the fee only. Fun fact for those who didn't know, Ben used to be a fee only planner as well. And we both obviously worked in the finance industry. So this one's big, right? And like, imagine me, Coach Danny, like working for a certain supplement company, right? And when you come to me looking for advice about supplements, I'm going to be super biased and want to tell you, you need the supplements that I'm being paid to sell you, right? So that bias exists when anybody works for a certain company. They can't give you, they just not in their wheelhouse to be able to give you the full basket of like, actually, I think this product's going to be better for you over at this company
Yeah,
because
they
you're
may not even
paying
have
me because I'm
access
paid
to
by the
it.
company. Right.
They may not even have access, right? Like if you're selling supplements, like you can't sell people, a retreat, right? Like you can't sell people, like
right.
a red light, you can't sell people, like you can't
Right.
prescribe
Which is what
yoga
they
for people. You
might
can't.
actually really need.
Yes,
Right. But
exactly.
I'm
Like you,
only going to think that you need my supplements. Right. So, it's such a bias. And when it comes to money, it's massive. And it's a huge, like, pain in my side. We have some friends who work for some companies that do that. And it's like, I mean, I love you, but, don't please do that. It's just, yeah. So that's another tangent. We've got a couple,
I'm like, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
Tangents here. We're gonna have to
It's a whole
do
other
that
rabbit
for
hole.
like 5 other podcasts. I hear we've got a couple tangents here, Liz, some rabbit holes. But yeah, this has been incredible, Lisa. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your knowledge, just for everything that you bring into my life personally. So grateful. I mean, even just talking in this podcast now is having me reflect back to all those years ago when we coached together and I did your program. We did some one-on-one work together, and like how much of this stuff really shifted for me from then and continues to shift for me because of the work that we did together. So it's fun to kind of reflect on that as we're talking. And just so deeply grateful for you. Where can everybody come and work with you and find out more about you? Like, what are you doing? I know you mentioned at the beginning a couple things that you're kind of supporting people with real estate, with coaching. Maybe you can speak more to that. So anyone who's listening or resonating or wants to get in and do some of this deep work around money can come and connect with you.
Oh, I so appreciate that. Thank you. And I love, like, thank you so much for sharing that these things are still percolating and still impacting you. Like, that is, I mean, I'm sure you feel it with your clients too. Like, like the work that you do, like changing people's health, and that like literally changes the trajectory of people's lives. And I think that cannot be understated. The ripple effects of that are just so expanding, and we never even get to know what all those are, but it's so cool. And so I thank you for sharing that. And thank you for also creating those ripples in your clients and the work that you do, because you do such amazing stuff. So for me, a lot of my work these days, I've kind of like got two buckets going on. So, one of them, my husband and I, I'm really passionate about investing, and whatever that is, one of the ways that we choose to do that is through real estate. So, we now have a portfolio with over 90 doors across Canada and continuing to grow. And so, we help people who are started investing in real estate, but want to scale up and grow, because there's obviously different challenges. As you may have one door, maybe two, but to go to, how do you go to 10? How do you go to 20? How do you go to 50 or 100 if that's where you want to go? And how do you build that up? There's some real nuances to know in there. And we love supporting people through that process. And then I also kind of booted accidentally, but so amazingly, my private coaching as well. So in the private coaching, obviously it's very highly personalized depending on what people need. But some of the things that we typically working on is, what do these values look like for you? Your the clients that I work with are typically women who have achieved a certain level of success. They have ticked a lot of the right boxes. They may have careers that feel good enough, but they still feel like something's missing and know that there's more out there for them. And so it's like, how do we figure out more alignment? And so that's what they come to work with me on. So very highly personalized, but often we're looking deeper than just like a circle the values on a spreadsheet kind of exercise. We're going deeper in terms of like what is actually important. We might be lining up some of these financial pieces. We might be looking at what some of those goals are, and really looking at how do you just create that beautiful balance of having clarity about where you want to go and doing favors and things that your future self will thank you for and getting yourself in that direction. And then also, how are you joyful and present in life in the moments every day? Because life is also short. So it's like, how do you find that balance in your life, in your career, and with your family, with the health, like all money, all those pieces in a way that's so personalized to you. So if people want to reach out, the best way, probably Instagram. I'm the Lisa Michaud on Instagram. You can also find me on my website, although it's not really super up to date. So Instagram is probably the best place. Or you can email me. I can throw out my email there too. Maybe we can drop that in the show notes as well. And people can email me. We can hop on a call and just see if it's something that you're interested in, if it's something that I can support you with. If it's not, whether it's real estate related or personal, and I have other resources or other people in my network that I think that could help or anything like that, super happy to point you in a different direction. And if it's something that I think I can support you with, then we can have that conversation too.
Amazing. So great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, we'll make sure all those links are in the show notes below. Highly encourage any of you who are resonating with anything that we talked about today to definitely reach out to Lisa, have a chat, connect with her on Instagram for sure. And just again, thank you so much for being here, Lisa. Everybody listening, tuning in, I hope that you found this really valuable, and look forward to having you back, obviously, with all these other topics that we've planted seeds in, and we'll have more conversations here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love how you make everything so deep and meaningful. It's such one of your real gifts, is being able to take these things that feel like everybody's talking about it, and really pull down to like, this is the core of it. And not everybody is talking about that. And that really is your gift. So thank you for bringing the juice and the deep conversations and some rabbit holes into this. I've really loved it. So thank you.
Yay. Fantastic. More of that, more rabbit holes. All right, everyone. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone you love. It helps me incredibly reach more people and help more women who need this information. And if you're ready to go deeper into discovering your unique root causes and patterns keeping you hooked on sugar year after year, be sure to come and check out the brand new free root cause quiz that will give you actionable items to finally begin healing your relationship with sugar from the inside out. You can find the link to download this quiz and other amazing resources in the show notes below. I also wanted to just take a quick minute to share a disclaimer. The information provided in this podcast is for general purposes only and is not at all intended to be professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And as much as I do my best to bring you up-to-date and accurate information, please remember that I'm also sharing my opinions, stories, and ideas that are ultimately not supported by mainstream science. My personal advice should not be taken as professional advice, and you are always encouraged and advised to consult with your own healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your health and wellness routine. This podcast is intended to inspire and offer you alternative views to healing your relationship with food, mind, and body. It is up to each listener to take responsibility for their own health and wellness decisions. I hold no liability or responsibility for your results or lack thereof. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast, and we can't wait to see you in the next episode. Let's go.